Learn React Part 5, let's talk about Redux. Redux is a global state manager that uses a special data structure called a store to manage state. In native React, every component has its own state. When we talk about application state, what we're really talking about in native React is properties being passed from parent to child, and possibly from the very top level component all the way down to the very bottom level component. A problem occurs because if I'm in a particular child component and I have some error with some state that's coming from my parent, I don't know if it came from my immediate parent, my grandparent, or an ancestor far up the tree, potentially all the way to the top. This makes debugging really hard. It's also not ergonomic for developers to pass state sideways or oblique through the state tree or the component tree. Redux solves all these problems with a global state container called a store. Components directly speak with the store, and now debugging is easy. You are just getting your state from your store, and you can always just go right there and debug it. You could choose to manage state globally with a global object, just an object on the Windows scope. Redux instead uses a store, which is an object-like data structure that includes functions to read and write data, and it's also immutable. How do you read and write data to an immutable object? Technically, you can't, so we don't call these functions getters and setters. We call them selectors and reducers. The reducer is actually a special factory function. Whenever you run a reducer function, it creates a whole new store and replaces the previous one. It does not update the previous one by reference. A selector selects values out, very much just like a getter function. Selectors and reducers are two kinds of functions you can run on the store. In general, we just call them actions. There's a third catch-all term, which is middleware. So you can do selector, reducer, and middleware. Using an immutable object that's replaced completely works well with React's change detection. It also enables features like time traveling because we can keep track of the transactions, that is those functions which update the store and result in replacement of the store. Again, really good for debugging. Because the store is constantly being replaced, we can't maintain a by reference relationship. We need to maintain a by value relationship. That's why selectors are functions. You can select out the value on any instance. And all of these actions, selectors, reducers, and middleware, are run in a queue. And it's basically a callback queue. And to place your function into the queue, we call that dispatching. So you're going to dispatch an action, and all that means is that you're going to place one of these functions in a queue, and it's going to run on the normal React change detection lifecycle. And that's it. You now know the basics of Redux. You can create your own global object and use object.freeze, and you'll basically have a store. The only difference is you won't have those Redux-specific function names to replace your store. But it's really very much doing the same thing. Last thing I would mention here is that there's one super special kind of middleware, which is called a thunk. Callback functions are usually synchronous, but the thunk will allow you to have an async callback so you can do HTTP requests and cache the results in your store.